Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Google Hangout with the Buck Institute for Education. I'm John Larmer, the editor-in-chief here at BIE, and today we'll be talking about some elementary school projects from this year. So a couple of logistics first. You can ask questions during the Hangout. If you want to ask our guests some questions, please use the question feature over there, and if we can't get to them during the Hangout, we'll answer them later at the Google Plus Events page. And this will be archived, by the way, recorded and archived at bie.org. So if you don't catch it all, or you want to tell friends about it, or watch it over and over again, it'll be on our website, and I'll be writing a blog about it afterwards too. So let's hear from our guests first and see who we've got here from all around the country. Jennifer.
Hi, I am Jennifer Burnell. I teach 4th grade over at Fall Hamilton Elementary in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Do you want me to go ahead with my project now, or are we introducing everybody?
Hang on, let's get everybody introduced first, and I'll get back to you. Mary.
Okay. All right, my name is Mary Beth McKinney, and I read in social studies at Smith Springs Elementary here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, and Mila.
Hi, my name is Mila Lee, and I am an instructional coach in Novi Community Schools, as well as a national faculty member for the Buck Institute.
Okay, thanks, Mila. And Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Starkey, and I am an instructional coach and technologist for my district, as well as a national faculty member for the Buck Institute.
All right, and you're down in Texas. So, all right, so thanks for joining us, guys. So these projects you're going to hear about are all, basically follow the Buck Institute's model for gold standard project-based learning. And of course, some of the elements can be, stronger or not so strong depending on the project. But I think you'll hear a lot about the gold standard project design elements as you hear about these projects. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had secondary projects, by the way, and this week it's all going to be K-5 projects. So let's hear about them. They'll be giving you a brief overview of the project and then reflecting a bit on how it went and lessons learned. So, Jennifer.
Okay, I'm up. All right, I'm going to try to go through 2 projects. This is my first time with the Google Hangout, so I am going to try to screen share as I talk about this. So give me a moment. It's right here. All right, can we see that? Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay, good deal. All right, so one of the projects that we did, this is kind of our culminating project, or product, I guess, but it was called the Best Field Day Ever. A couple of our boys in the 4th grade have a few behavior problems, believe it or not, and we chose them as a special group to work on this project together, and they took it and they ran with it, and it was really impressive. What they wanted to do was they wanted to create a field day event. Our field day was a couple weeks ago, and it was awesome, but they wanted an event that they could take ownership of, that they did, and they came up with this. They came up with every single part of it. The driving question ended up being, how can a field day event bring people together? And they really did bring people together. They accomplished that through this. If you notice, I'm going to try to go through some of these. They took data. You'll see let me see if I can get to the survey right here. This is the survey. They came up with the survey. They created 3 questions, and you can see kind of at the top that they did these grade levels, and they would circle boy or girl. And so they made graphs based on each question, based on what grade level it was, and based on if it was a boy or girl who answered. And they did that so that they could come up with a kind of a consensus throughout the school of what everybody would want. And we analyzed the graphs. If you look down in here, you can see that what our outcome of the graph was, and what we noticed, and what our conclusion from the graph was. And so that ended up creating the project itself, and they ended up coming up with a scavenger hunt, which, let me see if I can scroll to that one. So these are not in order. There it is. And they wrote the scavenger hunt themselves too, and this scavenger hunt has a PE element into it, because whenever they would do something, whenever they would find something for the scavenger hunt, you can kind of see right here, find a star and do 20 jumping jacks, and so they would do things like that. Once they did this during field day, each class got to do it. We had people coming up to them, to me, to the 4th grade in general, and just raving about their project and how it was, and they loved it. They loved every single part of it. They listed their steps, and their handwriting is awesome, but it was all just a really, really great experience for them. When I look back on it and I kind of think about what would I do, let me kind of touch on the standards a little bit. We had a lot of different cross-curricular things in here. We had a lot of math, obviously, with the data gathering and the the researching, the graphing in general, the analyzing of the graphs. With ELA, they actually researched a whole lot about field day projects, and that's where these initial ones on the survey came from right here. There were a lot of things that they read from Time Magazine and from a couple other areas, News ELA, things like that, that had a lot of these questions and kind of answers that led to them to questions, I suppose. And that was really useful to them. So they did a lot of ELA's research. And then, of course, they did a lot of writing through this, which was fantastic, and then obviously the scientific method. So this was a fantastic project for them. Looking back, I probably would have them maybe speak at an assembly, the boys who participated in this, speak at an assembly, or maybe on the announcements to kind of show why or how they gathered their information a little bit better. We had them present to some adults, but I feel like it would even be better if they got to present to the kids. The kids were really excited when they found out that we were doing a scavenger hunt, and I think the boys being able to see their faces when they found out that would have been really wonderful and useful to them. So I'm going to move on to the next project unless anybody has any questions about that one. Good? Okay.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I love that driving question. It wasn't just how can we create a successful field day, but how can we create a field day to bring people together? That's a nice, more complicated.
Yeah, and it really did work. I mean, when I look back at it, we were watching kids all over the school. I mean, some of the scavenger hunt things were inside, some of them were outside, and we got to watch the kids just get together, and they were so excited about it. Kindergartners were helping fourth graders, third graders were helping. I mean, it was just really cool. It was really fun to watch. We did notice a mistake that we made. Is one of the questions was something along the line of find a teacher who's wearing an orange shirt and ask where they went to school. And it turns out no teachers wore an orange shirt that day, so that was a little bit of a struggle. So it was kind of crazy. So I'm going to move on to the next one. The next project that we did stemmed from something that the kids got really excited about. Here it is. We went on a field trip to the Tennessee State Museum, which is actually a really cool place, and the kids were fascinated by a presentation that we had when we were there. They learned about flax and spinning flax into linen, and they learned about spinning cotton into thread and creating garments with it. And they were just so excited about that, and so they wanted to know how. One of the things they did during the presentation was they talked about how they could dye these fabrics into different colors, and because everybody didn't just want to wear the same kind of brown. And they got really excited about that, and they asked if they could do it too. And I was like, well, why not? And so this, like Myra, I think it's Myra, right? She said earlier, she said that it came out organically, and that's exactly how this project came out. And so what we did was we researched some of the things that they could dye fabrics with. We talked about the different types of fabric, and you can kind of see some of our results on this picture. This is a T-shirt, while the rest of them are pieces of fabric. Some are linen, some are cotton. We had a control where we didn't do anything to it. We analyzed these afterwards to kind of see what exactly happened, and we noticed that things that we thought, or they noticed things that they thought were going to really dye the fabrics, like beets. Let me see if I can find that one. Yes, this one is beet. It just didn't do nearly as much as you would think. The blackberry obviously had the most impact on the fabric, but the kids actually had to research this. They had to research the process of actually getting the dye, I say dye very loosely, out of the fruits. We used, I'm trying to remember them all, spinach, beets, blackberries, blueberries, and I feel like one other thing that I can't remember right now, but they actually had to get the color out of it, and then they actually had to dye the fabrics, and it took a really long time. It took several days for us to actually get this done. Then they made a grave error, some of them did. They put them in the sun, and it bleached them a little bit, which was a little bit of a problem, but they learned through that. But you can see some of these pictures of them doing it. They had an absolute blast doing this. I didn't mention our guided question, but our guiding question, but our guiding question for this one I loved. It was how did people on the frontier dress to impress? And it was that whole idea of most everybody was wearing the same color because flax is a certain color, cotton is a certain color, but they wanted to be different, and so they were trying to dress to impress. Cross-curricular wise, we had a ton of math. They had to do a lot of measurements with the recipes to get the dye out and things like that. You have to use salt, you have to use a lot of vinegar, you have to use water. We did a lot of social studies, obviously, with this frontier, researching about them, the field trip, the science, obviously, with the whole scientific method. And then they did a lot of reading on this first. They read a fictional account of somebody who wanted to make clothing dye different colors, kind of somebody who lived on the frontier. But then they also got to read a couple of actual accounts, and then even at the field trip that we went to, they got to hear a first-hand account. I mean, not literally first-hand, but it was from an actor, or an actress, excuse me, of one of the women who actually did this, and they were just absolutely fascinated by it. So these are kind of some of the pictures that we came up with. They just had a blast. They had an absolute blast doing it. If I were to say what would I do differently, one of the things I actually wanted them to do, we just ran out of time for it, was have them actually sew a garment out of this. I love to sew, so I was kind of trying to find a way to get that in here. But we had the fabric. It would have just been really neat to sew something really simple and then maybe have them wear it. The other thing is we wanted to, I was thinking, why don't they forage for materials next time? If they were to forage for something in our own schoolyard, could we make a dye out of that? I mean, just kind of taking it a step further. This last picture I'm showing you right here is they discovered that if you let the dye sit for longer than an hour, I think one of them was an hour later, and one of them was like 9 hours later. Oh, that's what it was. 10 minutes, and then an hour later, then the dye got darker. So they discovered through that. So that project was really fun. We enjoyed it.
That's great, Jennifer. It's a good example of a project that at first sounds kind of simple, but then you can tie in all the standards for different subject areas to that.
It was awesome.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Mary, how about yours?
All right. So what we did is we did a project, and the driving question is, how as we as fourth grade students or fourth grade writers, how can we inform the public about the Revolutionary War? This is my first year doing project-based learning, and I'm loving every minute of it. It's a lot of planning on the front end, but as you see through the presentation, the students really had a lot of success with it. So here we go. Let me pull up my PowerPoint. Let's see. Okay, so we started with the Revolutionary War project, and we had an expert from Knoxville, Tennessee. I had recorded him over the winter break, and he basically gave our students their driving question: how do we as fourth grade writers inform the public about the Revolutionary War? And throughout the project, the students emailed him questions on a weekly basis, so their sustained inquiry throughout the project was really high. They were very excited about the project and any questions they had, and hearing from an expert. He is a historian at Bleak House in Knoxville, and so it was really great. We divided our students into groups, and so each PBL group had a yellow team member, a green team member, a blue team member, and a purple team member, and so they were responsible for finding information for the standards that surround this ICANN statement. So if you were the yellow team member thinking about slavery, the green team member thinking about the key people in the American Revolution, and then the blue team member with the Tennessee settlements, and the purple team members with the battles. These groups were also based on ability, and so it got progressively harder. Your yellow team member was a student that would focus on one topic, where your purple team member would take 3 battles and research and write about them. So in their groups, as you can see, I have 2 blocks of students. All groups are mixed ability groups with different abilities of students. And so each student was responsible for the ICANN statement in their group, and then each group came together to create their final project, which we'll see in a minute. We had the calendar at the onset showing them this took about 4 weeks, but due to snow it took 6. And then we had an assignments checklist for them at the beginning of the project, so they knew exactly when things were due and then how they would be graded. It was either a yes or a no on the specific questions. They wrote their ICANN statement, and then as they were completing their research, they would fill in the information as they found it. Their information was placed on Blendspace, and so they had voice and choice in what resources they would use, but they did have to use 2 websites, a video, and then the social studies textbook for their information. Here you see each group member's checklist So each group member knew exactly what they were responsible for, and then they had a voice and choice in either the settlement they would choose to research, the 3 different battles they would choose to research, one historical figure, and then from what adult or slave child. Here's our PBL board. This is up throughout the project, and so students can come, and as you see the dog, our expert, one student had asked about if he had a dog, and our expert tied it in with the Revolutionary War and said, I have a dog, and it's a Great Pyrenees, and it connects with the Revolutionary War. And so the students were, our expert even connected the fact that he has a dog to the Revolutionary War. So as they emailed questions, then I would print them out and then post them to our PBL board. And so every Monday the students came and they would look at the board for what our expert had said about their questions. It had the standards, the driving question, and then the calendar. So then students, if there was ever a question about when things were due, it was on the board. It was a great reference for students. Some of the projects, individually, the students had to type out an essay on Microsoft Word about, this is a Purple team member example of the 3 battles of the American Revolution. Member was responsible for typing their article, and that process involves students typing on the computer, looking at their rubrics. Here on the top right, you see a student there preparing for their speeches because their final project was presented in front of parents and other students in the building in the library. They're working with the team members, so each team member is a different color, so they're responsible for a different aspect of their newspaper, and that is the final product. Each person writes the article, and then each team will create a newspaper based on 4 or 5 different articles about the Revolutionary War topics of slavery, the battles, influential people, and then the Tennessee settlements. We had a lot of collaboration, a lot of group work. We had the checklists for them. So as they're writing an article, they are checking their work and working in their team. Here are the winning group members. So this was an exciting time for them. The students were really excited about the project because the winning teams went to the PBL Expo in Nashville in March, and they presented their Sway, which is an online collaborative space, I guess, for each student could upload their article, and the team can edit and manipulate the article at the same time. And so here you see students presenting their online collaborative article, and so it's a Revolutionary War newspaper, but online. And then here you see the students presenting their projects to younger students in the building, and then also parents were invited to this event too. We probably had about 20% of the parents from the 4th grade, and all of 4th grade students did this at the same time. The winning teams received certificates, and then as you can see, their certificates. So the reflections from the project. What went well? I think the sustained inquiry with emailing our expert went really well. The students were excited, and they emailed lots of questions to him, and he got back on a weekly basis with us. What made it work is the preparation on the front end from another 4th grade teacher and I's part. A lot of checklists and rubrics and calendars, making sure we had that on the front end for the students, but it made it work because the students knew the expectations at the beginning and knew where they were headed and how to pace themselves. They were excited to present their projects to students in the building and then also to parents, but then the 2 winning teams got to go to the Project-Based Learning Expo in March, and they presented in front of all the elementary schools in Nashville, so that was really a driving factor in their success as well. What would I do differently? We had a lot of snow days, so I guess considering the calendar, next year I plan to try to launch this project in November or December to end before the winter break, so that hopefully snow won't be a kind of a hindrance for the project. It kind of lasted a little longer than expected. It took about 6 weeks instead of the 4 weeks planned.
Yeah, that's always tricky. Projects often tend to go longer than we first think, but but with snow factored in, I'm not surprised it went any longer. And the trick is to keep the momentum going. If it drags on too long, the kids might lose interest or lose focus, or you want to move on to the next thing after the project.
Right, we have a lot of standards, and so I was like, oh no, we've got to keep moving. So.
All right, well, great. Thanks, Mary Beth. Let's hear from Mila, Michigan.
Hi there. Let me see. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Let me see. Share. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. I want to talk through, there's my role 2 years ago was a project-based learning specialist within my district, and what happened after that was through grant funding it ended and I switched into the role of an instructional coach. But I still support and help teachers out with their project-based learning units. One of the units that is in the project search in the BIE website is a Courtyard redesign project. One of my 5th grade teachers, Carrie Grimm, he actually was thinking about this project a while back. He's a 5th grade teacher, and this is his 2nd year of doing project-based learning. So he really started to think about how can I do this project. He wanted his whole focus, what really resonated with him through all his learning is authenticity for his elementary students. So the topic that he's going to be covered, the content, is social studies government, which is public discourse, decision making, and citizen involvement, and ELA, persuasive writing and informational text. There is a bit of math. It's not a huge force in it for scaling for this project. Well, one of the things the one thing we know about the Courtyard redesign project that was presented in some workshops is that it never happened and never was built. So he really wanted to think about how can I make sure that there will be funds, that there are things that have to happen with this. Why it's social studies is because we ended up going to the Civic Center one time, and he ended up talking to some officials there, and the whole thought of how you can take how decisions are made within a local level, and how do you make it so it's relevant for students. Well, the relevancy piece is within their own world, in their classroom and in their school. So the first thing he wanted to do was he wanted to make sure he had enough money for that. He wrote a grant. He asked PTO to help raise some money. They supported him. They did a couple fundraisers, and he went out to some local businesses. And he had his list of experts ready, which were like the city manager and folks for landscaping. So that would help with the sustained inquiry for this project. The first thing they did was they took a walking trip from their school to the city offices, and they learned about how the local governments, how decisions were made, from how things are built, what you need to take in consideration, costs, roads, public safety, the water, everything that comes, all the decisions. That is not just a decision that you make, you build it. There's a lot of collaboration in the world for this to happen, and so that he wanted that to really resonate with students, how decisions were made. And also how their voices can be heard as citizens. So from there, they ended up looking at, and here's where the math comes in. They start looking around the courtyard and making measurements, starting thinking of a budget, and then the next thing is sketching, starting to begin their sketching and their drawing. One thing that resonated, that was a surprise for him, was that his students, because they came in knowing Google Draw, ended up teaching him. They actually came to him and said, aside from just doing it on paper and pencil, can we do it on Google Draw? And so that's one thing. If he had to go back, I asked him, he said, I wouldn't underestimate the students. I would really want to know the technical abilities of my students before they even approach this project, because you can really capitalize on that. Then they voted as a class for the top 3. So the 2 classes that did this voted. And from that, 3 were chosen. And from those 3, and now keep in mind, during this time, he's going back, he's learning about they're doing the lessons for decision making, for government, on top of having this experience at the civic government as they're going through this project. Then they put the top 3 for the whole school to vote on. So the school voted, it was voting day, the democratic process. Once they chose one, then the work began. And the kids, because they created the budget and they reached out to the local garden area stores, they did the work. It wasn't architects or landscapers. They had experts come in and show them, but they did the work, as you can see them doing this. They took time and they ran into problems because things that they assumed would fit perfectly didn't, and had to, problem solve and work as a team and think about, okay, it looked good on paper. How can I make it better? How can I? But it's not looking. In reality, it's not working. So as this was a 5-week project as well, and as they finished up, they were putting the last few touches. They had a celebration of learning in the school, and this is where they sort of had an unofficial ribbon cutting where they thanked the experts, thanked the contributors. And now they had a celebration, had a pizza party. And now this is a picture of other classrooms within the school using this courtyard. Up until then, it was not used. It was a place that all the students walked by, and they did not ever use it, and now it's being used functionally. I wanted to also point out that that Terry tweeted this out. While they were digging things up, this was like a did you know fact, he unearthed this in the courtyard. And so it started questions like, who was this person? Because it was a memorial plaque, and here's almost a coincidence, I don't know, it was on his birthday. That was kind of funny. Wow. So, are you still seeing the screen, you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one project, and I bring that to the point because he really took the time to think about how much it would cost. He really wanted the project to live. And this, again, it was his second year, and he did a really nice job with this. I think his lesson learned was to make sure he didn't underestimate the power of the students and what they brought to a project. I have 2 very short projects I'm going to showcase for you because I think they bring something to the showcase of elementary work. Another project is this was another teacher seasoned in project-based learning. The students were reading an article in Minecraft, and together, because they've had experiences with project-based learning, we're able to co-construct a driving question together. Now keep in mind they've had some experience with this, but this allowed for student voice because this group of students, this was done by Megan Ashkenani at Village Oaks Elementary, and it was a 4th grade class. They were able to use this driving question, and she knew persuasive writing was part of their curriculum. So she really capitalized that, quickly came up with a unit, and when you gain more experience in project-based learning, that's the one thing that does happen, is that you can start to think through a project like this. They ended up presenting it to PTO and got it funded and came up with a budget, figured things out, and had voice with it, and were able to pilot Minecraft EDU. JL, I noticed that I'm looking at time, and I want to make sure that the last one, so I'm just going to leave that, and if there's time later, then I'll share the other project, but I'm going to make sure that I honor that.
All right,
so,
thanks, Mike.
No problem.
All right, great when plans actually have it, what a sense of accomplishment.
Thank you.
All right, Erin.
All right, I wanted to quickly highlight a math project. A lot of times math projects are difficult because we've got a lot of content to cover and not a lot of time to cover them, and so it turns into shorter projects. And this one, we were faced 3 years ago, the math standards changed for us in Texas, and the rigor went up dramatically for 5th grade. So we had to figure out, okay, they have not had experience with fractions at this level any younger, and I taught 5th grade math and science, so how can we get our 5th graders up to speed and cover those gaps, but also send them to 6th grade prepared, because they're they were going to have gaps moving forward. So we were looking for a way to address the challenges we saw with that. So I'm going to share with you our cookie project. So what we did was we put students in groups. They had their math packets and their math journals, and I'll show you some snippets from that math packet coming up. I really wanted to focus on differentiation. So how could I make sure that the needs of my students with special education requirements be met? And what they did was they were in small groups with their 5th grade level groups, and then I would pull them into a small group with me. And then they also...
Aaron, we're not seeing the next slide. Did you go to the next slide? Oh, there. Okay.
Okay. Not sure I didn't pull it. Okay, so we put them into groups, and then special education students were grouped with their grade level peers, and then also met with me, and then they got their resource pullout. So we met them at every level, exposing them to 5th grade content, and then also giving them the math on their level. We also used fraction manipulatives, pictures, and drawings throughout the project for any students that needed it. So it hit the needs of English language learners as well as your grade level students. So student documents, they were given a packet of the different recipes, and they had 3 different things they had to do. So they had to double a recipe, half a recipe, and 1.5 a recipe, which when you haven't been required to do anything beyond adding like denominators was quite the challenge for them. But again, we needed to make it authentic. So we focused on heavy collaboration, really teaching them how to critically think and problem solve through this process. And our first year we did this, the students went to the science lab, they made their cookies, we turned them into the cafeteria and they baked them for us, and then we just did a class share out, getting to enjoy our cookies. But as we reflected on our project, we decided, well, what could we do to make this project authentic? And also, what could we do to make it relevant for each year and take it beyond just, hey, our classroom enjoyed cookies? And we decided that would be a bake sale, because the focus of the bake sale could change every year based on what needs each classroom had. So if there was a student that needed money, or if we had a disaster in our town, what could we do in order to reach out to our community and bring the community into our classroom with this project? So that's what we focused on with our cookie project, and we're able to cover all of our content that we needed to with fractions, and then watch the kids really hold on to the challenges and take those and run with them, where we were so worried about what that was going to look like for them, since everything was so new for us. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great, and I like the way you you made it more authentic for the next year. That's great. Raising funds was a great project. Raising funds, kids can pick which kind of charity and do a lot of research on where, how people spend money they raise. Great stuff. Okay. Well, yeah, time is about up, so we probably should wrap up. I'll come back to each of you guys for a final word in a second. Let me just remind our viewers out there that this is our second Hangout About project. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago was secondary projects, today elementary. And we're going to be doing Hangouts in June, but a little differently. We have our PBL World Conference, so we're partnered with GettingSmart.com. They'll be doing Hangouts from PBL World, and we're taking a little break from Hangouts. 2 weeks from now, there will not be a Hangout, but the week after that, at PBL World, June 13th to 17th, there will be several Hangouts. So look forward to seeing you there, and I'll be writing a blog about how you can stay in touch with happenings at PBL World if you're not actually going to the event. So, okay, let's have a final word from our guests, and we'll start in the same order. So, we're with Jennifer.
Okay, hey, final word, I guess I want to say I've only been doing PBL for about 3 years, and I've gotten a lot of support through my school this year. My principal is very excited about PBL, and so am I, and it makes the kids very excited. I just think PBL is such an opportunity for very authentic learning with 100% real-world application. I mean, as I was listening to all of those projects, I just kept going, yep, well, that's real world. We figure this stuff out all the time as adults, so why not start as kids? I love it. Thanks for letting me hang out.
All right. Thanks, Jennifer. Nice to have you. And Mary Beth.
All right. Well, just to reiterate that project-based learning is definitely, am I on?
Yeah, you're on. Yeah.
It's definitely an exciting thing, and as my first year doing it with you and playing with you, but collaboration is great. And as we've heard from other projects, don't underestimate what the students can do, because they definitely taught me a lot about the technology and just their willingness to work with it.
Okay. Great message. Thanks, Mary Beth. Appreciate it. And Milo.
I guess in just working with teachers with project-based learning, as well as being an elementary teacher who had done project-based learning in her classroom, is that to take the time to listen to your students and also to reflect. To give time for yourself to reflect on the unit, to see how it can be better, and to also give yourself a pat on the back for taking that leap of faith in trying something maybe different or new that you haven't done before. But the engagement you'll get from your students as well as yourself will be worth it. And it's not hard to go back and actually look at a unit that's been done before and make it your own. So having like project searches and listening to reading books and looking at other teachers and talking to them, you can take a project and make it your own, and even bring your students into the fold. Good luck.
Right. Thank you, Milo. Hey there. And
I would just reiterate all of the above, but also to say that it's a process, and so stick with it. Stick with it, reflect on it, and reach out. One thing I was afraid to do was reach out to the community and ask for funding, ask for help. There are so many willing partners out in your community. Get out there, ask them. Nothing is impossible. Truly, it's not. Whether you have administrative support or not, because I did not always have support. So keep with it, stick with it, and use your community and use your teammates. Collaboration is key. Awesome what you can do.
all right. Great final word, Aaron. Thank you very much. All right. Well, thanks, guests, and thank you, viewers out there. And you can watch this on the archive at bi.org and look for a blog about this, which I'll write for next Monday. So thanks. See you at PBL World or online. Bye-bye.